Hello and welcome to Chats the Television Podcast, Season 9, Better Off Chats. My name is Alan, and I'm sorry we're late, folks. I've been trying to get my co-host to eat slower in the morning, and it's a whole project. Anyways, hi Magellan. Good afternoon.
Hey, what's up? I do eat pretty fast, actually. I'm kind of notorious for it in my household.
Melon looks at you and she's like, meow.
Yeah. Well, she's sleeping right now, but she's
We need to get Melon on the podcast. Ask her which episode she wants to do.
Okay, hey Melon.
Meow.
What do you like Better Off, Ted?
No.
No?
No.
What's your problem with it?
Linda.
Okay. All right, I guess that's kind of fair. It's more probably on the writers than on the actor though, right?
Yeah, she just texted me. She said we should watch Killing Eve instead because she likes lesbians. Lesbians.
Okay, all right, sure. That's fun.
But she didn't want to share that with you because she was not sure if she is ready to come out to you just yet. So don't make it a big deal, please.
Okay. Well, you sort of broke her trust right there.
I did do that.
Yeah.
That's why they call them stockbrokers, because they brokered the. Hey everybody, welcome to Chats the Television.
Let's just start over.
No. This is so good.
Okay.
This is the best episode we've put out so far. And it's Chats the Television Podcast. We talk about TV. We talk about shows. We watch shows. And one of those shows is Better Off Ted. This week on Better Off Chats, we watched Season 2, Episode 3, Battle of the Bulbs. This episode was written by Michael Shipley and was directed by Mark Buckland. All of the credits that I got for these guys are the same, like 10 TV shows like Last Man Standing, American Dad, Better Off Ted. But Mark Buckland worked on a bunch of Scrubs Season 3, which we're watching right now with Fake Doctors. So if you're watching that, listening to that podcast, then you've seen some Mark Buckland directed episodes recently. Battle of the Bulbs originally aired December 22nd, 2009. So we're in the Christmas season in the spirit, and I would love it if you could tell me what happened in this episode, Magellan.
In this episode, Ted becomes jealous when Linda upstages him and desperately seeks another way to receive Viridian's approval. And Lem becomes upset when a colleague in the lab begins sleeping with his mom, a famous scientist who despises Viridian's work. Alan, what'd you think of Battle of the Bulbs?
I liked both of these plot lines with caveats. Caveats?
You know it's pronounced caveats.
I've never seen it pronounced before.
What are your caveats? Or what are your likes and dislikes?
You talking about dead fish eggs, like the rich people food? What caveats? Oh boy, these jokes are good, man. This is golden.
You gotta dial it back like 2 notches.
Okay. I thought that the Lem's mom stuff was great, except the fact that her character is mostly defined by her sexual promiscuity was like interesting. It's a question mark. I liked her though. I liked the performance a lot. And I like that Linda is taking a bigger and better role at Viridian. Even though that it's like kind of put a different sort of conflict between her and Ted. I like that more than their romance. But the caveat of that one is that there is still like romantic underpinnings to all of their competing, and I don't love that. What about you? What do you think?
I enjoyed this one. I think, well, let's just pick a plot to get into, and I can kind of give my more detailed thoughts. Do you want to start with the Lem's mom plot?
Yeah, Mrs. Lem.
Clifton.
What's her first name?
Stella Clifton.
Stella Clifton's an awesome name. I love that.
It is a good name. So essentially this plot, the way that it boils down is Veronica wants for Ted to try to sweet talk a famous physicist lady named Stella Clifton. But oh no, Lem says don't hire her because she hangs her bras all over everything. And it's his mom.
Oh my God.
He doesn't want his mom to work for Viridian. And concurrent with that is also a related issue for Lem, that Dr. Bamba goes to one of his mom's talks and then has sex with her a lot at his house. And so now poor Lem has to deal with this new relationship that his mom has with Bamba, and the plot is also a way for us to explore the relationship he has with his mom. And then Ted does try to get her to come to Viridian, so we get to see the relationship that Phil has with Lem's mom as a result of that. And then it all gets tied up in a nice little bow, and everybody, does like a sitcom hug at the end, and it's sweet. So I liked this plot. I was entertained by it the first time that I watched it. I think the second time I watched, I was less engaged in it, but overall, I think that it was charming. I enjoyed, just to speak to what you said about Lem's mom, I enjoyed the fact that up to this point, Lem has spoken about her as if she's, this sort of like tropey old mom character that some TV characters have, where it's like, oh, my old mom,
The old lady.
yeah. And so you sort of have an image in your mind of like, that sort of tropey, my mom is so strict and she's so old and whatever. And then the first shot that you see of her, he opens the door into her room and it's this very warmly lit, and she's wearing a low-cut silk robe, and it's like a hot lady. I just thought that was really funny, because it's the subtle way for Better Off Ted to be like, come on, you thought you were picturing that we were going to do that sort of hacky old mom thing? No, she's a hot lady, so get used to it. But then, like you were saying, they really kind of drive that joke into the ground a little bit, where every single character is like, dude, your mom is hot. Like when Phil says, oh, you should stick up to your mom, and then he opens his locker and he's like, even though she is really hot. And then at the dinner, Phil's like, you're hot. It's like, okay, guys, it was better when it was this like thing that happened in my brain that made me check myself, as opposed to this thing that you're constantly repeating as like a core characteristic of this woman.
Yeah, I to clarify, don't have the issue with her being like engaged in sexual congress with Dr. Bamba.
Right.
But I do have a problem with like the repeated, like you're saying, everybody being like, did you know? Did you know? Did you get it? Because Candy Alexander, the woman who plays Stella Clifton, really a beautiful actress, and she's in a ton of stuff. I think she's most notably in, like, she's a regular on CSI Miami. But she was also like in Scandal and Treme, and she was in that really bad 2018 Fahrenheit 451 movie. And she's credited as playing Toni Morrison in that, which I don't.
Okay. I didn't know Toni Morrison was in that movie.
She's definitely not in the book, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, she's all over television, so pretty well regarded. But her performance is really good. You don't have to tell me that she's a pretty lady. I got it. I super got it. I still think it's funny when the actor who plays Phil says that she is, but I'm good, guys. So I thought that stuff was like a little bit wonky, but I always appreciate a good Dr. Bamba plot. I think he's still really funny, and I had this image of Lem in my head of like, hot bachelor, like the contrast with him and Phil. Like Phil lives with this wife who absolutely hates him and ruins his life, but he still kind of vaguely thinks he loves her, maybe.
Yeah.
And then Lem is like having, relations with a woman in the office, and he's like, he's on the dating stuff, and it's like, no, he still lives with his mom, and he actually has like mommy issues. It just those two things can exist in concert together. But Bamba kind of pulls like a Kramer in this, and he opens the door of the lab, and he's like, guys, guess what? I had awesome sex last night.
The audience is like, woo!
Yeah, we love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, him in that tension of like, I'm your weird dad surrogate now, Lem, is uncomfortable in a funny way. But they do the back and forth with everything.
It's just a very standard. It's very standard. I think that's why we're sort of struggling to like analyze it really deeply, is because it feels like this is a plot that's happened in a bunch of sitcoms. Like, oh no, you're having sex with my mom? Oh God.
Right.
And like the moment where Lem is like, I'm not going to ever call you dad. There's something in me that wanted to laugh, and then my brain was like, don't laugh at that. You've heard that joke 100 times.
Yeah,
and
that
you've
doesn't. They can't keep doing this.
yeah, don't let them do this to you. Is kind of what my brain did.
If anything, what
Yeah.
I enjoyed, it's really cool to see like a black woman as a leading important scientist that like different companies are vying for. That's surprisingly uncommon, or it's depressingly uncommon
Yeah.
actually in media. Not
Yeah.
surprising. Uh, and having that not be a big deal, like nobody's questioning her authority or her skill as a scientist. It's more about Lem trying to impress her, even more than it is like not accepting Bomb as a father figure. It's him being like, well, I don't know if I want you here, because what his real problem is like she's going to critique him for everything, because that's what she's always done. She's always pushed him to be better so hard. And having her at Viridian would exacerbate that even more. He can't compartmentalize his home and work life, if you will. Themes.
Themes.
But I did really also enjoy like when Phil finally is like, my friend is under a lot of stress here, and he goes to the dinner and he drinks the happy juice, and he tells her, he yells at her and tells her, you have to be nice to your son loves you, and he always has wanted you to be happy. And Ted is there also because it's part of it. He's like trying to broker the deal with her. And basically my favorite line is when Phil is drunk here at the dinner table and saying how he, yes this, yes that, yes I think you could be better, and no I don't have a third yes. It's just really well done, and that actor is he plays drunk really well.
I wrote down the very, very end of the monologue where it ends with, yes I wish I had a third yes, and yes I don't.
Yes I don't. Yeah, exactly. Jonathan Slavin. I keep forgetting it, but he's so good. And he delivers his lines so quick and effectively that I just love it. But yeah, drunk acting is really hard. It's hard to make it. You have to either do what he's doing here, which is go full comedy, or it's just a really subtle thing, because you already are acting heightened when you act. So, yeah, I like that a lot. What is the other big plot line of this episode, John?
Well, the other big plot line of this episode, so that covers the Lem's mom, Bomba, Phil stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then
and then he makes popcorn that pops in your mouth, and it's a very cute, charming scene where she plays it so tenderly. She's like, "Oh, I love that. I'd love to try that." And she takes it, and they like giggle and have like popping popcorn together.
Yeah, I thought that was actually really sweet.
Yeah, it was.
And then there's that line of like, I'm sorry I didn't look at your satellite, and he says it's coming back in 2015, and she says it's a date, you bring the popcorn. It's like, oh, okay. All right, you got me. Better off.
We missed it though. We should have watched the show 5 years ago instead of Farscape.
What did you think before we move on from this? I know that you've had mixed feelings about the depiction of Bomba before. How did you feel about him in this episode?
If I'm being really critical,
yeah,
he's just once again being kind of scapegoated as like an annoying character. But I think that's just his character. Like,
yeah,
making the foreign guy, the sexually promiscuous guy, is like obnoxious and a bit tropey, and I don't adore that. But I don't feel comfortable like fleshing out that point, because I know a lot of people like don't agree with that point, and also I don't think that there's enough evidence to support that that's exactly what they're doing here. It's just like Bomb was horny. Like, he's not, that's not his defining character trait. It's his like ignorance and
because he also hasn't been like that in any other episode, I don't think.
Exactly. Yeah. I still think the computer episode is his best work, but
yeah. I mean, they do bring back the thing where it's like he loves killing people, which sucks, where Lem's like, you've made such great advancements in military technology. And he says, oh, it takes a village to kill a village.
Yeah,
which is
man.
Horrible. Come on, Better Off Dead. Stop it.
Bad.
Quit normalizing the military-industrial complex.
Dun.
But yeah. Anyway, so the other big plot is where the episode gets its title from, the bulbs, the Battle of the Bulbs instead of the Battle of the Bulge, right? And in a way, the Lem plot is a battle about the bulge. Think about it.
I don't want to think about that.
All right.
I'm going to decline to think about that.
All right, well, I thought that was clever, but anyway.
No, it's clever. It's just sexual.
The Battle of the Bulbs is the A plot, I suppose. Like, though this one, it's kind of hard to tell. It feels more like a B plot, where Ted is giving a presentation at the beginning of the episode about his super long-lasting light bulb Veronica says, that was the idea of the project, so great job. You did it, which is funny.
Thank you.
And then Linda has this great idea. A fly dies on her light bulb and it makes a horrible smell. And then she has the idea, what if we created scented light bulbs? Ooh. And then it becomes this sort of power struggle thing where Linda's idea becomes the darling idea of the executives. Ted's idea gets shelved, and he's really upset because he was so committed to this light bulb project. And Linda gets, fast-tracked through the world of being a project leader and all the politics of that.
Mm-hmm.
And they have difficulties, Ted and Linda, and then they patch things up. Because it's a sitcom, baby. That's how it goes.
Ted is jealous of Linda here and wishes that his idea got taken instead.
Yeah.
Linda is worried what everybody thinks and has to get a pep talk from Veronica, which is interesting considering how we already know things about Veronica, and seeing in the second episode she kind of worries about what people think too.
Mm-hmm.
But she's working through that as well. It's a tough love approach that I always enjoy in TV, because I think like tough love, you can get a lot of comedy out of someone like misinterpreting tough love. And then Ted being jealous is just like, oh, that's a new dimension of Ted I don't really think about. Is his staunch commitment to Viridian also means that he doesn't like it when other people do his job better than him.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in his head in season 1 to say, oh, well, Linda works for me, or Linda is below me. But now that she's kind of like climbing the ladder and on his level, it's like, oh, no, I don't like this way our relationship is going. I don't want you to be like, I don't think I like that you can do better than me. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, and this plot really combines the two kind of worst qualities of Ted's, which are A, his competitiveness, and B, his sort of slovenly devotion to the will of Viridian dynamics, and just how badly he wants to be approved of and to do exactly what the company wants him to do. And so I appreciated that the plot explores his character once again to that extent, showing us kind of like what are the qualities that get someone to the position that Ted is in, and what does that do to someone when they like don't get their way,
or when somebody else tries to get there.
Yeah, right.
I mean, look at that scene. Look at that scene with the meeting. Where they're like, oh, I guess I lead the meeting. And then Linda's like, no, I lead the meeting because I came up with the idea that they're going to take. And by leading it, he's like, all right, Linda, what did you plan? And she goes, Ted, bring us up to speed. Like in leading, you get to tell other people to do the work for you.
Right.
Which she's kind of like coming into her power a little bit, which I like a lot.
Yeah. And it is nice that the plot is really this character study of what does it take to be a business leader? What does it take what happens when those characters are challenged, like with Ted?
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's kind of an element of like being a woman in business too. It's not really spoken of in that way, but you could sort of interpret it that way, that Veronica's teaching Linda how to be a successful woman in business specifically. And it being all about this sort of like confidence game, which we've talked about before and which has come up in the show before. So I think all of that was actually good corporate culture satire, kind of like what we saw in the Jabberwocky episode. This felt reminiscent of that in terms of just like the goal of the plot. And my favorite part of the plot was the character of Chet, who we've seen before, the executive guy who's like Veronica's boss.
Oh yeah,
the guy who
speaking of the gender dynamics of this whole thing,
right?
Him being a nasty man,
right? He makes a joke about something. Linda says something about her bulb, and he's like, "Heyo," and Veronica's like, "Very good, sir." He like walked right up to the line without crossing it, and then he slaps Ted's ass or something. And it's the whole thing.
Yeah. Exactly, like Ted kind of becomes the person. Like they're kind of suggesting, maybe in a satirical way, that it's less about gender and more about like who is doing the more profitable thing. The person who's doing less, I'm going to tease and I'm going to sexually harass and I'm going to be awful to. And Linda gets to kind of like get out of that role now by being more successful.
Well, and if you're reading it in a gendered way, you could also think about, like, is the reason that Ted is upset with Linda because he's, like, kind of sexist?
Yeah, as a woman being more powerful than him makes him uncomfortable. I think that's definitely part of it.
Yeah. So that's something to think about too. And he sort of liked the relationship they had before, where she was, like, below him, and that felt right to him.
That's what I'm saying. It's awesome.
Yeah. But I really like Chet just because the guy playing him is so good at, like, seeming confident, but, like, being completely terrified whenever something goes slightly wrong, and having to kind of, like, reassert his confidence, and all of his, like, completely vapid, blank stares. Like, my favorite moment was when the guy in the meeting was like, I've heard the light bulb stinks after a couple of days. And Linda berates him and tears him down and is like, oh my God, you're jealous of the light bulb. And then Chet goes, Saunders, take your weird emotional issues and get out. So funny. I think he was the star of the episode for me, was Chet.
He gets a lot of the best lines. I agree.
Yeah.
I think my second favorite line, while I look up who that actor is, because I want to see if he was in other things, actually came from Ted speaking to Veronica about how he's jealous and he's frustrated. And I think basically the setup for this joke is that he's, like, talking about jealousy, and then Veronica's like, yeah, I've been jealous before, like that time that I put testosterone in my sister's water and I made her into a monkey girl and she had hair and they made fun of her and she got kicked out of school. Like, holy crap. Every once in a while, Veronica just slides a little bit of her backstory, especially with her family, and you're like, oh geez.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was weird. And then, yes, the guy who plays Chet, Terry Rhodes, who I don't recognize from. Oh, he was the co-pilot in Liar Liar. Oh no, he passed away in 2013.
Oh, that's sad.
At 61 years old. Wow, pretty young actually. But he's really good. Rest in peace to that guy. Yeah, I think that's generally what I liked about this one. I think it tackles some bigger themes pretty well and doesn't pivot entirely on their romance for once, which is refreshing, to say the least.
Yeah, but you could also sort of read it in a like romantic relationship way too, of you get uncomfortable when your partner gets more attention or when they're more successful than you. Like that also I think is a kind of, like, male complex that Ted is exhibiting here.
Right.
Yeah.
And we actually close this episode on, for once, Ted does the Scrubs thing where he says, like, hey, here's the actual non-ironic message of the episode, which is basically whether it's like he's standing in front of, like, a gigantic light bulb and, like, it's kind of a cool set dress, but he's telling us whether it's your mom or your boss, you should never be chasing someone else's approval, which is definitely true, but is kind of like a simple understanding of the dynamics in this episode. It's kind of like this is the easiest connecting thread between these two.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of basic. But then it also gets sold out right away, where where Chet congratulates Ted and he says, "Wow, that felt good."
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
But we all still like approval. There's nothing wrong with wanting approval from people. It's just that you can't, like, live for that. That can't be your only motivation.
Right.
I do think structurally, for Better Off Ted, this is a good thing they can start doing, is being like, hey, it's like a nice little bow on the episode, and you can put a little gag at the end of it like they usually do.
But I also liked that a lot more when that was expressed through the Viridian Dynamics commercials, which just seem to not exist anymore.
That's what I was going to say, is if this show, because the episodes are still, like, barely going over 20 minutes. They're so tight. And if you're cutting out Viridian Dynamics commercials and instead doing these little, like, buttons, I would definitely rather the commercials. Yeah. Maybe those are getting expensive to produce, because as I come to understand it, they are, like, they're doing all of those. They're filming a lot of that stuff. It's not just stock footage.
Really?
I think it's a mix. Yeah. There's 100% there is stuff in there that somebody filmed. There's no way that is all stock footage that they found.
Right.
I simply refuse to believe it.
Yeah, I think it really I think it's a loss for the show's tone, and I mean, it speaks to what we were talking about past few episodes of. It just shows that they're sort of emphasizing the like Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine approach as opposed to the like Veep approach to dealing with the characters, which is fine, but it wasn't the show that I was sold on at the beginning.
Right. I want that satire. I want that like sci-fi satire and insanity. I don't need this like silly office comedy. It's my biggest complaint with season 2 so far. Yeah. Excuse me, is that we're really just becoming an office comedy.
Right.
There's very little that makes it better off Teddy.
Yeah.
I do want to say though that my last note was the popcorn scene with Stella and Lem. It's made all the funnier. That is an example of like, okay, they're using science and like the sort of absurd ways you can manipulate science to make products, in a funny way. They're eating the popcorn and like the sound effect of the popcorn in their mouths popping is like so tinny and bad. I was like, this sounds fake. Like, is the joke that it's being recorded from afar? Because it sounds like garbage. But I think that was just like they couldn't get a good, like, I don't know, maybe that's not in a sound library or something.
Well, I think they were just trying to create the sound of what would it sound like to be popping inside their mouths, and
right,
that
like
is probably tricky to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have a guest who's coming on in the second half, and that guest made a really great point to me when he watched the first episode here that I'm just gonna credit to him and say, which is that it's really strange after Jabberwocky, where Linda cares so much about like greening the company and all that, and Ted is kind of, apathetic to it at best. It's really strange that Ted now is like, this light bulb project, I've been working on it for so long and it's gonna like stop climate change, and Linda's like, yeah, whatever. That's just such an odd flip of their characters that is totally different from where they were with the greening the building stuff in Jabberwocky.
I actually did note that, like, once again they're making a joke about climate change, because I do think that Ted's idea for like reducing plastic and use in light bulbs is a really smart and useful thing. But you can have scented light bulbs and also have like recyclable, or whatever his plan was, like, reusable light bulbs. Those can both exist, so you don't have to make a joke about climate change once again, guys. It's all right. You're allowed. But that's
I mean, I think it's not necessarily a problem that they're making a joke about climate change. It's just like they're not being consistent with what the characters have
right
before.
They literally said the opposite a couple of like episodes ago.
And also I found it hard to believe that Viridian Dynamics, this like amoral corporation, was working on a project that could be beneficial to the environment.
Yeah, this simply doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But anyway.
You need an environment to sell things on and sell it to people. That's why we always joke in some circles about like why the government doesn't want to help people like get through the pandemic, but they want people to support businesses. But I'm sorry, this is a little dark, but if people are dead, they can't support businesses. Dun 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 dun. I think it's a good note to end this half on Magellan. We're going to take it to a brief musical break, and we will be right back with a guest to discuss It's Nothing Business, It's Just Personal.
Welcome back to Better Off Chats. Alan, welcome back to it.
Thanks, Magellan. I'm glad to be here. I love being introduced on my own show. It makes me feel warm and welcome.
I think people have learned that I only ever say hello to you at the beginning of the second half when there's someone else to introduce. Otherwise, I just plow right through and don't greet you.
You're trying to make the guests feel equal. Like, I introduce Alan the way I introduce all of you.
I think it's more that I'm just trying to make it seem like I'm nice to you and other people are here to see it.
And whereas in reality, you're like, Alan, I told you, get the shit.
Like, turn your microphone on. But we do have someone with us, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I said it in the first half that we would, and I wasn't lying to you all. It's the truth. But Alan, I want you to tell us who it is.
Folks, this week we are also joined by a cheddar-colored fabric that does spoil, It's Justin. Hello, Justin.
Hello.
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 No, don't. We can't woo this already. That's for the after pod.
Oh man. Well, hey Justin, welcome back to Chats. Astute listeners of the pod will remember that you joined us all the way back in book 3 of Chats, a television podcast, when we covered Avatar: The Last Chatspender.
Yeah, that was some number of years ago. I don't want to think about that.
That's 3 years ago.
I don't either.
The last year doesn't count. The last 2020 doesn't count.
Yeah, 2020 is a wash. But Justin, we've known each other since college. We've been friends since then.
Okay.
And
I'm glad you agree that we've been friends. I was scared you were saying we've known each other since college. We've been friends for a couple years.
We've been friends for some part of that time, and you can figure out which part of it. No. We've been friends that whole time. So it's fun to have you back on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here and back on the show.
The Last Chatspender, episode 21, September 3rd, 2017. The Crossroads of Destiny, featuring Justin at NoScope Radio.
Oh, man.
Oh my god, I still have that same Twitter handle. Thanks for the plug. Thanks for the plug.
I gave you a pre-plug right there. Oops.
My Twitter handle has changed, actually. I started capitalizing the R. Do you want me to brag about why?
Yes.
How do you... Is it even case sensitive?
It's not. It's a URL. So I got very into when the Polygon show did live recordings. I figured out exactly when they were recording and when they looked at questions and like how to bust the algorithm so that I could get on the show multiple times. And Simone de Rochefort kept mispronouncing my Twitter handle, so I added a capital letter to make it clearer.
Oh.
It's
now
radio.
Now I feel like I can't change it, even though it's a little bad.
I don't think it's bad.
I love bragging. I love talking about myself and how great I am.
Mm-hmm.
So if people listen through the Polygon show backlog, they could find your questions? Wow,
yeah, I had some pretty good questions. If you watch on YouTube, they had some while they were recording videos.
How did they pronounce NoScope Radio?
NoScope Radio.
Really?
Simone de Rochefort is great.
That's awesome.
It's very French. Or Italian, actually. Italian.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're not going to be talking about Polygon or video games. So they talk about on the Polygon show?
Yes. It doesn't record anymore.
Oh. Wow, yeah, that's right. But we are going to be talking with you about Better Off Ted, Season 2, Episode 4.
Yeah.
It's Nothing Business, It's Just Personal. It's written by Victor Fresco, directed by Mark Buckland. It originally aired December 29th, 2009. Can't believe they were airing new episodes in the last week of December, but they did it.
Yeah, that's my note.
You wrote a note about that. Okay,
this is December 29th. The previous episode was December 22nd. Neither of them is Christmas themed.
They really rode that rail and did not address it. We will get to the description of the episode in a moment, but Justin, if you could tell the folks just your personal history with Better Off Ted. Have you seen the show before? Have you watched other episodes? What are your general thoughts on the show? All that stuff.
Yeah, so I did not watch Better Off Ted when it first aired. I was an NBC Thursday Comedy Night Done Right kind of person. But what I realized is that I have seen 2 scenes from Better Off Ted because they keep getting posted to Imgur every couple months. Mm-hmm. The scene where I think Phil is like harassing a woman and her boyfriend is there and he's like, we have the same phone number. I've seen that scene. And I've also seen the scene about the statistically average lady. But other than that, I'm just watching the show for the first time in like the last week and a half.
What do you think about it so far?
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. I thought the first season, especially like the start, was like very impressive for a new sitcom that had kind of its vibe early and wasn't like super great yet because it's like the first season of a sitcom, but definitely gave the impression that that if it got better like they usually do, like it could be like something really special. And I thought the start of the second season has been like fantastic. and I am not really including the episode we're talking about today.
Oh,
in
no.
that evaluation. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
We've talked a bit about how the second season just feels like a tonal shift, and definitely that first season doesn't have the season 1 jitters that so many shows seem to have. It just comes right out the gate, and it's like, this is what the show is about. These chairs make people more productive, and like that's we're just funny from the get go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're probably going to find out that we mostly agree in our overall discussion of it is nothing business, it is just personal. But also, thank you for like catching up. I've been keeping up with you, like binging our podcast and the show.
While watching the show in the last week, I've been like live texting Alan and Magellan different things about things I've been watching in the show and things from their podcast.
Yeah.
When Alan told me that you were messaging them, somehow I knew that it had to be entirely different things that you're saying to both of us, even though you were like texting me a lot. Somewhere in my mind, I knew like Alan is getting bespoke texts about our show.
I think the things that I've texted both of you, I'm going to mention today, and you're going to pretend to be surprised by them.
Okay, perfect. And the
Justin's
listener
kind
can
of an
try to
iconic
guess.
texter if you think about it. He's kind of one of my favorite. Like,
Yeah.
you're a professional texter.
Thank you. I feel like most people just like stop responding, and so that's why you're both my friends.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. That was easy. Occasionally, I'll just go, "Wow, yeah," and then we'll just keep it zooming. But I'm excited. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm excited to jump into this episode and discuss this one that we're talking about. So it's nothing business. What's that, Justin?
Can we start with the very top? Because there's something I want to discuss at the very start of the episode that I don't know that you've mentioned before, which is...
let's get the summary, Alan.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Go right
Okay.
to that point. Yeah.
Yes. Well, so I'll summarize briefly here. In this episode, again, it's nothing business, it's just personal. Ted gets in trouble with Veronica when he provides relationship advice to her new lover. It's not really a new lover, it's Mordor again, guys. And Phil and Lem compete over a new red lab coat that was mysteriously surfaced in Lem's locker. Spooky episode of Better Off Ted for Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, what's the thing we haven't mentioned? Come on, we cover everything in this show.
Okay, so
what do you got?
I think if you watch the show as it was intended, this would not be part of the show. But if you're watching on Hulu, before you watch the show, there's a several second ear con, which is a word I learned at work this week. Of an ABC logo plays, and they play they like yodel a little bit.
That one?
Yeah.
It sucks.
I've written down that it's that a couple years ago I got a Spotify recommendation for a pre-made playlist called Whoa the Millennial Whoop, and I feel like this would fit in there.
Oh, I need a link to that playlist. Holy crap.
I'll look for it.
Whoa, the Millennial
It's just
Whoop.
like Imagine Dragons songs and stuff. Like
A bit of Kesha too, yeah.
Yeah, where they go like, oh!
Apparently, I think the Millennial Whoop is something that's in like musical critical analysis because it has a Wikipedia page.
Oh,
that's funny. It's like
is it like the Lumineers thing where they're like, "Ha, that thing"?
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Haha, yeah.
Okay. So we start with the ABC Whoop, which is also in front of every episode of Scrubs on Hulu. So I'm very familiar with that. I heard it as soon as you mentioned it. Yeah, we have two main plots this episode. We have the sort of psychological warfare that Viridian Dynamics are doing with Phil and Lem, which I thought was pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
And then we have this relationship stuff that was, to say a word, not entertaining.
That was confusing, and I don't know why the characters made the decisions they did.
It's my review of every show involving straight people. So let's start with what we like, because I want to.
Let's start with the lab coat thing, right?
Yeah, the lab coat thing is like when I was picking an episode, the description of this on Wikipedia was like 1 line long, and half of it was talking about suddenly getting a red lab coat instead of a white lab coat, and I just felt that in my body of how horrible that would be. If I would be so confused, I would not bring it up, but I would be very scared.
Yeah.
And like from the moment that they're first, like in the first scene where like Lem, I think, is in the red lab coat and they're trying to figure out why, it is very scary, and that makes it funny.
It's extra funny that all of the scientists are afraid of it. These are people who like experiment with life-saving, life-altering substances and cures to diseases, and yet someone gets a different color lab coat and they're like running around like, oh, like Patricia's back or whatever, and they're all like, oh God, why is it red?
Yeah, I love
the comedy's not lost on me.
Yeah, and I loved especially the non-main character scientist. So Patricia is back from the first season, right? She was like kind of into Ted. And is the other scientist new? I think
he seemed new. Yeah, the sort of like sad guy.
I loved his delivery.
I liked him a lot. Yeah.
He's my favorite.
Where he kind of just talked disaffected. And I kind of
his line is like something like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like." It's just so new. It made me do weird things or something like that. It's pretty good.
But so they're all freaking out about it. The scientists are worried about it. And we learned from Ted separately that the reason that they did it is because some focus group determined that workers tend to be more productive when you change an element of their workplace randomly without telling anybody, which
and it doesn't matter what the change is, as long as something changes.
Yeah.
It can be good or bad or whatever.
Yeah.
This kind of ties into something I'm thinking about of Better Off Ted as a whole. So I work in what would normally be offices and is currently various rooms in my house. I'm a software engineer, and I think kind of something that I've noticed that's very different from working in an actual office compared to a sitcom about like a tech office is the sense of time. Like, I feel like since I've started a white collar job, like, I don't know how time passes anymore. Especially this year, but like in general, it's just kind of flat.
Well, right, you get used to it, and I know this is like the classic, the 90s. The reason that there's so many 90s office critique movies and television shows is because people got tired of this, but I think we've adjusted more to that monotony, and there's like sometimes there's something refreshing about it, but seeing the same thing, seeing the same people kind of repeating the same day over and over again, but collecting a different paycheck, and then introducing a new element to that is like, oh my God, like if somebody gets replaced in your department, one person, or the mailman doesn't come this day, or the cleaner doesn't come at a certain time, you're like, oh, everything's out of whack. This feels weird.
I think if they did like put me in a wacky situation each week, or like arbitrarily change something about me and like didn't tell me why, I think that manipulation would work on me.
Me too. Yeah, I when Veronica, I was suspecting that that's maybe what it was, and then when Veronica said it, I thought, yeah, if I pulled up to work and somebody had like I don't know, like teachers never get apples, right? But if somebody like had an apple on their desk inexplicably, I feel like everybody would be like, "Whoa, what the hell? Why didn't I?"
Or if like everybody had an apple.
That's what I was thinking.
Except you, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
except me. Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a real thing that inspired whoever wrote the episode, but it definitely feels like it's a real thing. And if it's not a real study, then whoever wrote this episode, was it Victor Fresco? It was, right? Was like a very astute.
Yes, it's so Victor Fresco.
Very astute student of human nature. If they just sort of came up with this idea,
I think that's what works about it so well, though, is that you wouldn't be shocked if you found out tomorrow that this is true, that like changing one element would like make people more productive, because when it's something bad and they think it's a punishment, they're like, well, we need to work faster and harder so that this doesn't keep happening. And when they think it's a good thing, they're like, well, I want more of it. So
yeah, and in the episode they like go through that. They immediately start thinking it's a reward, and like have a cutaway which is like very well edited to and fast very quickly, where we're just working very hard, and like Lem is like, I am working very hard now and I'm going to beat you, like literally saying what's happening in a funny way. And then later in the episode they think it's a punishment and start getting very scared of it. I am still just wondering, is it, if the satire, if the satire in Better Off Ted is less effective because of the sitcom format, that because we're in a format where there's fun things happening every week, is that failing to convey one of the like most essential parts of like what's bad about working under capitalism?
Right, because this is like a pretty grim concept that you could just be so easily manipulated into being more productive. But boy, is it funny to watch Phil be like, "What did I do?" or whatever. Then the camera like swoops up. So yeah, I feel that too. I mean, I think where this one is successful, at least, is in getting us to do what we just did, where we say like, "Oh, I guess I would act that way too if I was in that situation." So maybe it doesn't work as a sort of critique of capitalist structures, but it works as a sort of reminder that we are subject to the whims of capitalism, because we're easily manipulated little clay-minded people.
Yeah. Well, we're treated like lab rats. We're treated a little bit like test subjects, and again, the irony not being lost that these are testers and developers that are being treated like test subjects by the actual corporation.
Yeah,
it's all there. And I think it succeeds. I really liked that red lab coat. I was like, ooh, that's kind of a fancy. It's a nice shade of red.
Good shade of red. Yeah.
I did think it looked a little bit like a Santa suit.
Yes. Well, December 29th.
Which isn't bad. Oh yeah, there you go. I guess also, I don't know, if the show were gone, I mean, assuming that there would be like 5 seasons of the show or whatever, they would probably like have an episode about monotony.
Yeah, about feeling like you're living the same day over and over, and it actually turns out that Viridian is like testing.
Put you in a time loop machine.
Exactly. I would actually love that. I think that'd be brilliant. We just wrote a season 3 episode right there.
Oh my god.
Well, and something that we talked about in the first half, Justin, that I actually was curious about your opinions on.
Oh boy.
Is we've barely seen the like Viridian Dynamics commercials in season 2. There's been one. And what you're saying about like monotony or whatever feels like or variety. There could be a Viridian Dynamics, or like I think they did one about morale, but like productivity. And it feels like that kind of defangs the larger satire of it too. I'm curious if you sort of noticed the loss of those commercials and if you had an opinion on that.
So you think the loss of the commercials maybe is making the satire less potent?
I think that's my working theory.
I'd have to think about that.
It definitely, it messes with the timing of the episode because these episodes are so relentlessly paced, but then taking out the commercial and replacing it with an extra like 2 minutes, you feel that extra like 30 seconds, however long it is, and not having that like solid break in the middle just makes the episodes feel a little bit wonky. It doesn't help that the A plot in this one is a freaking 0 out of 10. But, I don't even have a lot of notes on the lab coat stuff because I just liked it. Like I liked watching, I just love the lab so much. We say this over and over again, but like the feeling of these guys are coming into the lab and they're hanging out, I would almost just take that over this Ted stuff because Ted's story isn't going anywhere.
It's very weird that we're in a show about R&D and like 2 of the characters are developers and 2 of them are executives, and that's the balance they're doing. Yeah. I especially love the set dressing of the lab even more in the second episode, in the second series. They've done this twice where they like start, if the first shot of the episode in the lab is like a shot through this new magnifying glass prop they have, but it's like been I've loved it both times. Going back to what you actually asked me about was about taking out the Viridian Dynamics commercial. I think that could have probably helped this episode. But I think overall, I like that we're seeing the commercial less. And the reason is, like, I think it's like, it's comedy. You want something new. And
True.
I think they have not had as many ideas for good video game dynamics commercials as they have had commercials. I thought like the first couple were amazing, and then even from like the third one or so, where it was pretty good, they like started repeating a joke where, like in the second commercial, they like the tagline was like "food yum," and that was very funny because I was new. And then like the commercial right after it, it was like diversity good, and I was like, that's the same joke. So
that's fair. Yeah.
When the video dynamics commercial came back in episode 2 or 3 after being gone for 2 episodes, I was surprised and I was like very happy, and I found that very fun. So
that's a good point.
I like that they're using it more sparingly. It probably could have helped this episode though.
Yeah.
I don't want them to abandon it entirely.
Yeah.
I think it can definitely help an episode where you're running into pacing issues. But we're not TV writers here, so I can't really speak to like what their intention is. But you also mentioned that like it's weird that they have 2 executives on the show, and from a network TV perspective, I definitely understand like, oh, we need people whose job is to just talk to each other because it gives us a lot of room for conversations and meetings and like corporate projects for them. I think that stuff works.
And you need the pretty people because all the scientists have to be like dorks or whatever.
Ugly nerds, yeah.
You know. But I do wonder if, I guess, Alan, you make a good point. Like, we're not TV writers, so we shouldn't be prescribed. Sometimes we prescribe, like, this would have made it better, and maybe we can't say that necessarily. But I do wonder what the show would have been like had Ted and Veronica not been, like, the most main characters.
Right.
But instead, they were the sort of, like, side characters. And Linda's the main character, and she's like caught in between the scientists and the executives, or like Phil or Lem is the main character or something like that. I don't know.
Or even if like in the 3rd or 4th season the balance shifts and they like elevate Patricia or Dr. Bomba to a main character level.
Right.
There's a moment in the first episode that reminded me why I like that. This is like my favorite thing about Ted is his relationship to Rose, actually. Where he's complaining about like people, they don't approve of me. I wish that like I was doing better than Linda, and like I don't know what the company wants. And she's trying to tell him like I want you to make this for me for lunch or whatever. And she's like, Dad, why don't you just ask the people what they want and then make exactly that? That's the secret. Like just the child perspective, like tears through all of the corporate nonsense and just gets at like, oh, this is actually very easy, and you're seeing the forest for the trees right now. I love that stuff, and I want that stuff more than like this stupid love triangle that we're getting.
Yeah. I want to force in a story about myself in like 3 points, but
yeah.
Okay.
First of all, talking more about like executives and people's roles in the show, I really liked that in this episode Linda is doing her actual job description.
Yes.
That she's not actually just being a woman in office, that she is being a product tester and complaining about a product not being right.
Right.
I was very happy about that. And then I think Rose is underutilized in the show. I don't know if it's because like there's like child actor restrictions. Or like they decided not to go in the direction they were going from the start, where she would be like the moral person or the like narration, but something that I mentioned that isn't relevant to this episode that I want to mention is I have a fan theory about Better Off Ted that I've mentioned to both of you, which is that Rose's character and her relationship with Ted and how she fit in the show was inspired by the Dane Cook movie Definitely Maybe.
You said that's your theory?
That's my fan critical analysis.
Wait, is it Dane Cook who's the main guy in that?
It's Dane Cook and Abigail Breslin.
It's Ryan Reynolds, Justin.
It's not Dane Cook. Okay, so here's why I thought it was Dane Cook.
But you said Ryan Reynolds, I think, when you sent it to me, or you just said.
I assumed it was Dane Cook, and that is the personal story that every year for Christmas my brother gets me a Dane Cook movie, and we've run out of all of the movies with Dane Cook, so he started getting me movies that would have had Dane Cook starring in them.
Like you already have Good Luck Chuck, and you have Dan in Real Life, and you have
Good Luck Chuck was the first. Good Luck Chuck is a lot. But definitely maybe
is Good Luck Chuck the one where he like meets ghosts or something?
There is a seance involved. Good Luck Chuck.
Or am I thinking of Ghosts of Girlfriends Past?
It's similar. So Good Luck Chuck is awful and unfortunately influential in my early years. It's a we're not going to get into that. It's a movie. So Chuck is cursed as a teen for like rejecting a goth girl, and he's cursed where whenever he sleeps with a woman, that
next
woman
person
will
he
get
meets.
married to the next person they date.
Oh, I've seen
And
this
it's
movie.
And so he's like, well, let's test this by like sleeping with women that no one could ever like, and or like let me sleep with a very hot woman and arrange it so she dates my friend next. And there's a lot that's bad about Good Luck Chuck. I did watch the DVD, which had the chucked up unrated version of it. Anyway, yeah, so better, but definitely maybe could have been a better Dane Cook movie, like Employee of the Month. So in that movie, Ryan Reynolds and Abigail Breslin have the same. That movie is this like rom-com mystery where Ryan Reynolds is telling the story of how he met her mother.
Right, another show inspired by that film.
I thought so. That movie that show came out before, definitely, maybe, but
this sounds kind of interesting. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure
it's actually kind.
I thought
okay,
so when I was a kid, I thought it was like a super duper good movie, and I think it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah,
it's kind of
decent
weird.
rom-com. It
It's
it has a spin that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
He's hidden the names of the women he's talking about, so she doesn't know which one's her mom. And there's like twists and stuff because it's a movie.
That's cute. I like that.
Yeah,
and then you as a viewer get to learn it, but I don't think the daughter ever learns which one is her mom.
Oh, I like that.
The daughter does. Yeah, I do remember the twist ending.
later.
The daughter learns, you learn what the real story is in the end, and there's a third act where it's in the present.
If it just wasn't Ryan Reynolds, I would be so on board.
Whoa,
if it was Dane Cook,
hold on.
Yeah, if it was Dane Cook, I'd be on board.
You don't love America's ex-boyfriend that we have a really good relationship with, Ryan Reynolds.
No, I was
just
definitely
maybe.
What I was really trying to do, Ryan Reynolds be on chats. What I was really trying to do was set myself up for a good Dane Cook impression, but you guys don't seem interested in my Dane Cook impression.
Oh,
so.
okay. What is it?
Go
ahead.
Okay,
That was it.
I have a fat cock. He says nasty boy things. Okay. Anyways,
that's good.
Dane Cook says gross boy things. I definitely see the connection there.
Also, getting back to Better Off Ted, Dane Cook, definitely maybe, is also extremely from exactly 2008 because part of the past is he worked for the Bill Clinton campaign and he's trying to address his feelings about Bill Clinton. Similarly, Better Off Ted is very much from late 2009.
Yes.
And in this episode specifically...
Did they mention Bill Clinton?
I was hoping someone had a point there.
Oh,
I was just trying to get us back on track.
Mordor looks very much like Dane Cook, if you think about it.
There you go.
Yeah!
The last two things I was going to say.
The hotness that they're expecting us to see in him is a very late aughts hotness, I think.
Yes. The last two things I wanted to say about the Lem Phil plot. One is the thing that I called Magellan at the beginning, which is so funny, where Jonathan Slavin, like Phil, comes into the office. He's like, sorry, guys. And you think he's going to be like, sorry, guys, the wife is at it again. What was it? I have it written down exactly because it's an incredible line.
I can't have my wife eating so much breakfast.
Sorry, I'm late. I'm trying to get my wife to eat slower in the morning. It's a project. Like, what could that mean? What is the suggestion there about Phil and his wife and she eats too fast?
Yeah.
I think that was a callback to how he was late one time this month because her wife was choking on breakfast. Can you believe it?
Oh.
Which sort of gives you a window into, like, maybe her hating his guts is not on her entirely. Like, maybe Phil actually is kind of dismissive and doesn't care about her.
That's a good catch, though. I didn't realize the connection. And then finally, just the Better Off Ted uses its sincerity card very, very sparingly. But Ted realizing, it doesn't have to be a good or a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a nice thing that influences them. So instead of the red lab coat, he ends it by putting a red potted flower on one of their desks. And they're like, oh, and that's supposed to be cute. I like that.
Well, and then they worry that it's a sign from the company or something, which is...
And then they're like, is this a sign that we're getting fired? Yeah. So
On the
let's
other
talk about the
hand-
worst plot in this episode.
Yeah.
kids.
On the other hand, I feel like their attempts at sincerity in the A plot did not work, and were sometimes very weird.
Ted and Linda are trying to pitch something to Veronica. Veronica's
Yes.
asleep with her eyes open. I have slept with my eyes open before. It's awesome. I recommend it.
How do you know? How do you know that you did?
Because somebody was like, Alan, you were asleep, and I know my eyes were open. I don't remember, I don't see my eyes closing. It happens at work sometimes. Don't tell my boss.
You remember your eyes being open, but you don't... You're conscious enough to notice that your eyes are still open, but not conscious... No end to the sentence, but you're not conscious?
Yes. That sentence was 3/4, 1/4, all the way. Which is also how I order my burgers at Five Guys. So she's talking about oh, you guys are boring. Give me some good pitches. I love, like I said in the first half, how Linda's taking on a better role here.
Yeah.
But it turns out Veronica is #on one because she's seeing Mordor again and she can't focus anymore.
Yeah, I thought the plot was that she has been saying Mordor continuously for 8 months, so I don't know why she's suddenly falling asleep.
Oh, and then she's sleeping because she's been having sex every night.
Yes.
That's what it is.
That wasn't clear. Yeah.
I think that's the first
Relatable, I'm
element
always
of the
doing
plot that doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it's just every time they try to incorporate sex into Better Off Dead, it gets
It's rough,
wacky.
yeah.
I thought I
love
mentioned
talking
this
about sex with my boss in the office.
It's one of my favorite things. No, I thought it was so funny, just the delivery of this line here. So she's spreading cream cheese on her phone, and she's plugging her bagel into the charging port on her desk. First of all, remember charging decks or whatever? That was a thing for a while.
Yeah, 2009. Also, is this the first mention of the word iPhone in Better Off Ted?
That's my point.
I think so.
It's crazy. He goes, Veronica, do you know that you're spreading cream cheese on your iPhone? And it's why? It's 2009, so he says iPhone, but now we definitely would have just said phone.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Bandage.
2020,
Band-Aid.
you'd say phone.
Whoa, different.
Yeah, it's very different.
Whoa,
different. Me watching anything old.
My other favorite joke from
Viridian Dynamics.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Different. Good.
Different good.
Oh, wow, you should write for the show. My other favorite joke from that sequence of she's so tired, right before the phone thing, I did not notice this the first watch, but when she goes to the fridge and slams the door on, I think it's Phil's head, Phil meekly squeals, occupied.
It's so quiet.
Okay.
It's so quiet, but it made me laugh out loud because I totally missed it the first time.
Yeah.
And of course, Phil would say something just not quite right, trying to assert himself, but also really not. It was so funny.
I'm starting to think that Jonathan Slavin, I think that Phil might be the best character, the funniest character on the show.
Phil had a lot of good moments in this episode. When he did finger guns, and he said he's trying to quit, and then he does finger guns again.
They're like, no, don't quit. We love that.
Yeah, when he's talking about how Lem used to have a Fu Manchu.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he's breaking down, he says, I am literally shaking with jealousy. I wrote down, get this man an Emmy after that line.
He really needs one. He's really, really good.
Yeah.
Ted doesn't need one though, because he's complaining to I think he's complaining to Linda about Veronica or something.
Yeah, after they leave her office and we get to the next stuff that doesn't make any sense in this episode, where Phil's complaining, I can't believe she's having too much sex. And Linda's like, Ted, you have to tell Mordor to stop having as much sex with Veronica, which is not something you would ask someone to do.
Hey, boyfriend of my boss, stop fucking my boss relentlessly every night.
And then when Ted reasonably says, Ted brings masculinity into it in a kind of normal way. Actually, he says I don't think it's normal for a man to tell another man to have sex with his wife or to have less sex with his girlfriend. Which it is very,
also
okay.
No. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's normal for Ted to say it's a really weird thing to bring up.
Yeah.
I think that's It doesn't have to be that gendered, but it can. But like there's a gendered weird thing that go back to Magellan. I'll see if I can remember if I can think of it.
The other thing about it that the show is like gendering and not doing so in a way that totally makes sense is Linda saying to Ted, like, you have to talk to Mordor and like have him not have sex with her that much. And then later in the episode, she is like explaining what her problem is with Ted.
It's
and
like
she's
the same
upset.
scene, right?
I don't remember when it is, but she's like upset with him because he thinks that relationships have to happen on the man's terms.
Yeah, it's like it's three lines in a row. Linda's like, tell Mordor to stop having as much sex. Ted says very weird. Ted says something a little weird of like, men don't have that kind of conversation with each other. You can't tell a man to have less sex with his girlfriend. And Linda makes a really huge jump to, oh, so you think everything in a relationship should be on a man's terms? Which isn't what Ted wasn't saying. Men should decide how much sex to have.
Yeah.
Ted's saying, I don't want to tell my boss's boyfriend.
And it is kind of what Linda's saying. Like, you have to determine how much sex is happening by going through Mordor instead of talking to Veronica about, like, hey, you're falling asleep on the job because you're having too much sex.
I think maybe,
so it's like, what's happening?
Yeah, that part was weird. That was weird, too.
More gendered stuff. Is it possible to make mistakes during sex, says Ted, before immediately correcting himself? Is it possible for a woman to make mistakes during sex? What do you mean?
That didn't make sense to me.
John suggested to me pre-pod that is maybe Jay Harrington like getting the line wrong and then fixing it. Which way funnier than, or he's an incredible actor.
I thought he was a very good actor, and that's how the line was written. I thought it was a joke that didn't make sense, but I thought was funny.
It was almost
where he was like trying to backtrack and like, oh, I gotta be woke. Yeah. I gotta respect women.
It was almost too naturalistic. Like, I think the line was written, is it possible for a woman to make mistakes during sex? And Jay Harrington said, is it possible to make mistakes during sex? And like corrected himself to do another take in the middle of the take. And they just kept the whole take.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
I think Jay Harrington fooled you with his good acting skills.
I think that I'm willing to accept that reality.
I think that after watching this episode twice and discussing it too much, we've maybe understood Linda's point about gender dynamics here, but I don't want to give the episode that much credit. I think her point was weird. I don't think it followed from I don't want to tell my boss's boyfriend to have sex with her. That I don't think the jump to so a man should decide everything about the relationship. That was confused.
It just doesn't seem to match with exactly what's happening or what they're talking about. I think it's a perfectly good criticism that Linda could have of Ted.
Yeah.
But in general, but I don't think it follows from the circumstances of what's happening in the plot. So that's why it's just so odd.
And especially how talking about pacing issues of the scene with this was like one scene after they were with Veronica, and it happened in like 3 or 4 lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think they wanted to get to this point, and they got there too fast.
My problem with this plot line overall is that it kind of jumps between like 3 entirely different theses, and like they don't linearly connect. Because if you look at just this scene alone, then the argument, at least that Alan believe in, is like, let the boss decide on whatever she wants, but let her know if it seems like it's affecting her work. Like, try and be an adult and tell her that. Like, hey, I think that it's not my business to tell you what to do with yourself outside of work, but it's definitely making a difference. Then you also get Linda talking about, my boss gets to have all the sex and the stress trickles down to me. Capitalism blows. Which is like suddenly, that's not related, Linda. I understand that's your stress.
They're trying.
And I agree with you, and that is how it works, but that's not the thing we're talking about here. It's frustrating when Linda's a socialist, but it's not important.
Right, the one time the show outright says capitalism blows is the most inconsequential moment.
It sucks that my boss has too much sex and I have to worry about that.
Yeah. I think that's a really good criticism of this plot, that it just it can't quite pick a lane on what it's trying to do and what it wants us to walk away with for some reason, or like a tension that is manufactured early on, is this idea that Linda's saying that Ted would be bad in a relationship, and he's like, no, I'd be great in a relationship. I'm a good listener, and I pillage like a Viking in the sack. Or whatever.
Okay, that is a theme. that they mentioned.
And there's this like argument going on between them where she's saying he would be bad and he's saying he would be good, which doesn't feel founded in anything because I don't think Linda has ever thought like Ted sucks and would be bad in a relationship. And now that feels like it's made up for this plot. And then it concludes with Veronica telling Linda that Ted would be great. After smooching him on the cheek. Thank you for defending me, my brave knight. Kiss, kiss.
And saying
he would be a great boyfriend. Like, what the fuck?
And Veronica said, "No one's ever defended me before," which is not true. And we've seen people defend her on the show. And even 2 episodes ago, Ted defended Veronica, saying it's okay to have a magician boyfriend.
Right.
Multiple weird things there.
It's just silly.
It's a jumbled mess because you have all of this, and then meanwhile, Mordor is sleeping with every intern that he can find.
That's the next.
What are you? I'm just exhausted by this plot because it's like, what is the thread here? I'm losing it every other scene. It feels like.
Mordor, who in the season finale of season 1 seemed like a kind of cool boyfriend for Veronica, is just suddenly mean. And the next plot point is, it turns out he's sleeping around after Ted agrees to tell him to sleep with. Yeah. Okay. Another weird thing. Ted tells Mordor, so. You're having sex with her and she's falling asleep at work. So maybe let her fall asleep. And Mordor goes, "Oh, and then have sex with her." And it's like,
disgusting.
Whoa.
Yeah. Red flag.
Not
red
appropriate.
Flag.
Yeah.
Also, like, not a good joke on this network sitcom that they didn't justify well.
Yeah, I suddenly just did not enjoy Mordor very much. Like the himbo, shitty, misogynist guy who's like, "Oh, I'll just..." Because what she finds out thanks to Ted, and then she harpoons him in the stomach, which is a very Veronica move.
I love
on brand.
My note there says, "I like violence."
Yeah, the violence there is excellent. But then his response is like, "Well, I got punishment for sleeping with her, but we're still together. So if I do it again and I can take another punishment, then I'm fine." It's like this weird ass backwards logic of like, okay, I'll just take another spear to the stomach. Like, what?
My notes say, "I like Mordor," and then 2 points after, "Oh, I don't like Mordor."
No, I do not. I regret to inform you, I do not like.
It was fun when he was kind of like a bumbling sort of stupid magician who also just was like horny for Veronica. That's fine. You don't have to. I don't know. You don't have to do all this stuff. If they just, it feels like they're trying to solve a problem that they don't have. Where it's like, okay, we need to write Mordor out of the show. Yeah. But, like, he's not in the show. You don't have to bring him back. Nobody's clamoring for this.
So
just don't.
Yeah, I like that this episode is bringing things back. I thought it was weird when Mordor suddenly disappeared in the start of season 2. I thought it was also weird that they suddenly bring him back and or think they have to write him out. But I am glad that they acknowledge that continuity exists. Another thing that I love that they brought back is the tiny office.
Yeah, I like that too.
From the office sharing episode.
I like that too.
Oh yeah, that set is fantastic.
Fun green lighting, which I do think that the tiny office is larger than any desk I've ever had, and that the only problem with it is that the desk is too big for the room. But it's still a very funny physical place.
Yeah, they do some good. They shoot that pretty well and do some good physical comedy with it. That was a whole fun sequence.
You can't do any office sitcom hijinks with a tiny office because somebody's like, "Oh, you're here? Okay, I'll step out." Nope, you can't step out. I'm in the way. This is awkward. I guess I'll just stay here. Like when Veronica and Linda are in there at the same time. Yeah. But then, so that part's funny, and this is where the episode just like gives up on any sort of character continuity. Because, he gets relegated there because he tells Veronica that, like, I don't like Mordor and I think he's, like, doing bad things to like for you in terms of work. Maybe he's sleeping around, all this stuff. And then Veronica, like, comes by and runs into Linda and she's like, yeah, that's really hot that he, like, stood up to me or whatever and, like, has his own opinions. They're like, both of them are basically, yeah, Ted's hot. And Veronica's like, no, I think I love Ted. What the fuck? What is this show anymore?
Yeah, and Veronica's like, I might be into Ted, but I'm going to be gracious about it and leave the room now. That was weird.
Yeah.
She tells Linda that Ted would be good in a relationship, and it's like, why?
Yeah, okay.
Why?
Another running thing in this episode, Veronica wasn't there for the conversation, I don't think, where Linda was saying that Ted wouldn't be good in a relationship. But suddenly she's like, actually, Ted would be good. Why is she bringing that up?
Good point.
Didn't hear that.
I don't. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure that I'm confident that that's accurate. But another thing that was good was a running joke. I really liked the running joke where that was introduced of like Linda's family says weird euphemisms for body parts, and then every episode starts doing it. That's always a classic. I love that. Specifically, there's this scene where Veronica's like, "In my head, you were awful, and you told him he was a dill hole," and Ted's like, "I just said that to you," and then later when Ted's confronting Mordor, he says, "And yes, you are a dill hole," as though he said it before. That was funny.
Right. Yeah.
That was funny, yeah. My last thing with the Mordor thing, I mean, it all sucks, right? But my last thing that I just get so annoyed with TV about this is that TV shows act like handsome men can cast their handsomeness upon people like it's a spell. And it's like, I find it hard to believe that Mordor could find not just one, but more than one person who's like at their job and he's a random person who's like coming into the building and they would be like, yeah, let's have sex right now. Like, he's a fine looking guy, but it's like, is this real?
Yeah. Especially because they all know that he's dating the extremely powerful Veronica, who has made multiple lives or like cost people their jobs before.
Yeah. It just was
maybe they think that's super hot. Super hot.
Oh, maybe. My wiener only moves when you move.
Right.
I don't know. Okay.
No, I found the episode. Sorry, Justin, go ahead. What's your big point?
This was a small point.
Okay, what's your small point?
Something else they've done again is have Ted getting hurt as just a joke, and it's not fun. It's not as funny as they think it is.
What was the example in this one?
Mordor uses his and then it's like maybe made up slapping martial art, and so why did it actually hurt Ted a bunch?
Yeah. There's also a slapping fight in the first episode where Lem and Dr. Bomba, or I think it's the two of them, like have a slapping fight.
Yeah,
I guess it wasn't as
manhood weeps when you fight like that.
Shut up, Ted. Yeah. Get out of here.
I guess getting slapped a bunch isn't as like 2009 as getting tased and thinking that that's not something we need to talk about and debrief about. But
that was a big moment.
My last sort of comedic note from this episode, because I just want to wash myself of it for once and for all, is Ted is talking to the scientists at one point about their spy pigeon technology. And I believe it's Phil, you can correct me on this, who's like, yeah, we made the spy pigeon wireless, but the problem is now it can only spy on people who are nearby. And that they just walk past that line, and I was like, wait. Oh! Like, I felt really smart when that clicked in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing was that before Phil is like arguing for how he contributed to the project, and he was like, before I made it wireless, it could only spy on people who are nearby.
Nearby, okay.
But now it can. Spy at range. And then Veronica brings it back later. She's like, I feel so free. I feel like a spy pigeon without a wire or something like that. Which is pretty funny.
Yeah. Another callback. Oh, sorry. I found it. I said I'm sorry, so I was letting you talk, and then I didn't do it because I love myself. Go for it, Magellan. It's your turn.
No, you go.
No, it's literally your turn. I'm not going to talk right now.
Thank you. So there were two lines that got a big laugh out of me. The first was when I think it's Linda comes into the office and tells Ted, like, Mordor's here. You have to talk to him. He says he's taking Veronica out for lunch and sex, which I did laugh at that. And then when Phil's like, wow, can you imagine how great it would be to leave the building in the middle of the day with Veronica and just have lunch with her? It's good.
I love these guys, and this is true to life, but they work so much that they're like going out. It's like when Ted is like, wait, the old guys go out for steak lunch during work hours? And I think all these people are just so used to never leaving the office.
Yeah.
And that is pretty relatable.
And then my last thing, my this line I thought was a really great Veronica line, where she's like, telling Mordor not to have sex would be like telling Gandhi to be less, whatever he was, thin. Which is like a pretty good joke that only a character like Veronica could deliver. I thought that was good.
Mm-hmm. I am going to talk now.
All right, please proceed.
A couple other things I only noticed the second time watching. One is that Veronica talked about. Veronica would talk about their sex adventures. Talked about how they ate a goat they ate like a rattlesnake and a goat in the desert, and then later there was a callback where Mordor says she's really good at dismembering a goat.
Again, that continuity.
Another thing I thought only saw the second time that was extremely weird. Another very, very weird thing that we didn't notice that we didn't mention this episode. When Ted was telling Veronica why he told her that Mordor was cheating on her, she mentioned, "Well, Linda would want to know."
Right.
What?
Huh?
Why bring Linda? What?
She'd want to know.
The other women I know about would want to know if she was being cheated. That wasn't relevant. Why mention her? If we're kind of wrapping up, I do have one other thing I want to mention that I've texted both of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
That if Better Off Ted had actually made it really big on the internet in the early 2010s, the Veronica Linda ship name would have been Bagels, because in episode 5, Linda is crying while eating an everything bagel, and then in the next episode, episode 6, Veronica says that you wouldn't know a caper if it was sitting on a plate of lox.
Yep.
That's an important point that our listeners should know about.
I always forget that some ships are not named after, not a portmanteau of the names, but are based on the common.
Just an element.
I love it. We need to get more fan fiction writers on our podcast, but for now, I think that's what we have for this episode. Pretty disappointing A plot, but a B plot that kind of saves it from being a complete skipper. But also a very fun discussion, so that's where we're at. Magellan, can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Can you tell me what we're watching next time on Better Off Chats, please?
I would love to. Next time, we are watching the next 2 episodes of Better Off Ted. Next week, we're watching Season 2, Episodes 5 and 6. First off, Episode 5, The Great Repression. A misunderstanding leads Sheila to falsely accuse Ted and Linda of sexual harassment.
Oi.
Oh,
Oi.
wait.
Right.
Go anywhere.
And then,
who is Sheila?
I don't know if we've met Sheila yet. We'll see. Then, Season 2, Episode 6, Change We Can't Believe In. Ted struggles with an employee who idolizes him.
Okay, there we go.
Sure.
Huh.
So those are the 2 question marks.
Definitely.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows how those are going to go?
Justin, thank you for being on the episode
Of
with
course.
us, man. Do you have
Thanks for
anything that you would
having me.
like to plug?
No.
Do you have a chat sim for this week then, sir?
Yes.
What is your chat sim?
Well, I do. Actually, I don't want to plug my Twitter account because it's not that good, but we already said it.
Noscope Radio, folks.
Yes.
NOSCOPERADIO.
I wrote down a bunch of things, but the thing I do want to talk is because it's narrowcast to Magellan and is kind of thematically relevant.
Okay.
So Magellan, you enjoy roguelikes that are available on the Nintendo Switch, right?
Sure. Yeah, I do.
Do you like the tech industry?
I guess, yeah.
Okay, but what if you didn't and you wanted to make a game where the tech industry is bad?
Sorry, yes. You're right. I don't like the tech industry.
Check out Going Under. It's roguelike on Steam. You are an intern at a startup, and first of all, like, look up screenshots of this game because it's like this. It's really, really beautiful. It's like a 3D version of the flat, super saturated color art style that like every website has. It's available at least on Steam and Switch. The premise is you're in fake Seattle. You start at this startup, and you're like, so am I gonna write like ads or something? And they're like, no, you're gonna go into the dungeons underneath the startup and kill the goblins that are trying to invade.
Whoa, this looks really cool. I love this art style.
Because the premise is that when a startup in Neo Cascadia fails, the building physically goes under and sinks into the abyss, and all of the employees become monsters that then attack the startups that get built on top of it. Wow. And so there's multiple different dungeons to go in of the multiple startups, and they're themed. And the gameplay is inspired by Breath of the Wild. You pick up like random objects that are just in like mechanical keyboards or large pencils or swords that are in the startup, and attack, but there's rapid durability, so you can like throw them to get rid of them. And you're trying to make it through the dungeon like that.
Just
going under, which is a word which has multiple meanings.
Well, I love multiple meanings.
Because it's when a startup goes bad, but also you're descending into a dungeon. Think about that.
I just watched the lady that you play as go into a floor, and there's like a man with a big syringe on his back. He's presumably the boss, and he's talking about regarding the unacceptably long bathroom breaks taken by contractors, and then from now on, all toilet seats will be angled at 45 degrees to encourage expediency. And then you fight him and beat him up.
Yeah, better off Ted anticipated the 15-degree toilet.
That's wow, yeah. That sounds surprisingly relevant. I might even check this out.
I guess disclosure that I have met some people who worked on it once, so disclosure.
Disclosed. Magellan, do you have a chat sim for this week, kiddo?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we checked, and I haven't done this one before. This is not a video game that I recently bought, but it's a video game I bought when it came out, like a couple months ago, and it's Star Wars Squadrons. I wasn't super into it when I first played it because I did like a mission in the story mode, and I was like, okay, let me go try to go online, and then I got completely destroyed.
Hell yeah.
Sounds like it, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to put this game down and not think about it. But then our friend Jim, out of nowhere, was like, guys, I want to really get into Star Wars Squadrons. And so he got it, and it's got cross-platform multiplayer, which is a big sell for the three of us because Jim's on, what did he do it on, the PS4?
Jim plays on PS4, Magellan plays on Xbox One, and I play on PC. So
on PC, yeah.
Beautiful.
So it's nice that you can cross-play. And it is hard, and I still do get killed a lot online, but it's really fun to fly around, and it started to click for me, and it's on a Black Friday sale right now on the Xbox at least. So check it out and give it a shot, and have a good time with Star Wars Squadrons.
There's a lot to it. It's part of what encouraged me to finally buy a flight stick for my PC. It has fairly robust flight stick support. It has a pretty interesting story. It's like kind of picking up as a spiritual successor to the X-Wing and TIE Fighter games from the 90s. But it's a lot more accessible than those. Okay. And, at the end of the day, it plays like a multiplayer shooter, but the part where you fly a ship around is extremely fun. So even when you're dying, you're like, but that was sick because I did a flip. I dig it. I'll second that chat sim just for you, Magellan.
Thank you.
I have two quickies. Oh, go ahead.
I forgot to mention, I just checked, Going Under is available on Switch, also on Xbox and PlayStation, and for computers on Epic Games and Steam. I think Windows only.
Is it on itch?
I can check. It definitely would be, but they had like an Epic Games temporary, so I don't know if it's on itch.
Well, I'll be sure to check that one out. My two chat sims are pretty quick. Not many people need to be recommended this, but I've recently fallen down the hole of watching Binging with Babish videos every night before bed. Binging with Babish, for those who somehow don't know, is one of the most popular cooking YouTubers out there. He does these incredibly well-produced videos where he teaches people how to cook things, mostly ones that are based on food from pop culture, video games, TV shows, films. Any piece of media that references a food item, he will make it and explain how to make it to normal people. And he's got great comedic timing. Again, really beautiful production values, which is a big sell for me. And it's legitimately making me want to get back into cooking beyond like the basic stuff that I know how to make. It's helped me like improve my burgers. I had burgers today. And I fixed those with some tips from Babish.
What did you do?
Lettuce under the patty, first of all. is the biggest tip, because if you put it above it, then the steam from the patty will kind of like shrivel up the lettuce.
I see.
So lettuce under the patty is number one. Also, caramelized onions are very easy to make, and pickles. You can't miss it. You can't not make a burger with pickles. I digress. Binging Babbage is fantastic. I knew about him for a while, but I only like discovered his channel because he recently hired Sola El Whaley, formerly of Bon Appetit, to be on her own series called Stumping Sola, which is really fun. They like give her a 2-pronged challenge and have her cook something based on that part, like make Thanksgiving dinner, but make it safe for space people to eat, like make it vacuum sealable, stuff like that. So definitely check out his channel if you want some chill vibes. So kind of like the lo-fi hip hop of cooking channels. And then my other one is actually, speaking of our buddy Jim, a Netflix series that he had been kind of haranguing Magellan and I to watch for the last week. It's called Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun.
What is that?
Yeah, it's a mouthful. It's kind of hard to recommend based on the title, but you can type in Auntie Donna on any place and find it. It's on Netflix. Basically, Auntie Donna is a 3-man trio from, I believe, Australia. And they do music and they do comedy. Yeah, they're Australian. And they've been doing stuff for a while, but Big Old House of Fun is sort of their sketch comedy 6-episode series where it's a bit like, not Mr. Show. The Mr. Show aspect of it is the fact that, like, if they do a sketch that's on a TV, then it always pans out by them watching the show on the TV, that kind of thing. It's so hard to describe. I think it's just really absurd. They have a little bit of violence here and there that they manage to make very funny, and there's just so many. Like, the sketch that sold me on, like, the show is not only good but great was basically in, I think, episode 2. One of them is playing Ellen DeGeneres, and he's like, talking. He calls like a viewer on the phone, and it's one of the other characters. He's like, Brian, go outside. What are you seeing outside, Brian? He's like, oh my God, it's a new car. And he's like, well, look inside the glove compartment, Brian. What's in there? And he's like, $1,000. And it like escalates and escalates and builds until you're like 7 miles from there. And he's like, Brian, I need you to pull the trigger and kill the driver. And he's like on an island. And then it's just, I don't want to spoil that sketch specifically because the end of it is amazing too. But they really nailed the, like, how far can we take this joke before it's annoying, which is so tough when you're writing good sketch comedy. But yeah, definitely give it a shot. It's not for everyone. It's also like a breakneck pace. Like at 6 episodes, you're just like, oh my God, I'm exhausted at the end of it. But if you like the first one, you'll be in for the whole show, definitely. That's Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun on Netflix.
The one that I saw on YouTube that makes me want to watch the show is the explaining the rules to a board game one. Is that one of them?
For some reason, I can't remember that one being in the show. I don't know if that's in like their other sketch stuff.
Maybe that's just like they make sketches, and that's a sketch they've made before.
Yeah,
that was a pretty good one.
The first sketch of this show is Morning Brown, which is like a song about drinking coffee that turns really dark really fast.
Oh,
it's kind of like the first time you watched.
I thought it was gonna be about poop.
No. It's kind of like the first time you watched Too Many Cooks, and you were like, "This is clever. This is weird. Oh God, here we go." But actually, a lot more clever and manages to draw out for like a whole 30-minute episode or something.
Huh.
So I really dig it. Check it out. That's what we got, folks, kids, gamers. Thank you as always. Wait, no, thank you, Justin, for being on this episode of Chats of Television podcast.
You thank me a lot in general.
Yeah, just thank you as always to Justin. Thank you as always to Magellan for being the rock to my hard place. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to this episode of Better Off Chats. Peace.